Good morning, Santa Clarita. You're listening to your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Wade Skalsky, your host of Wade Beyond The Courtroom, and I am excited to talk to you today. With me, as always, is Mike on the board. Mike, how are you today?
Good morning, Wade. Doing fine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
Happy windy Sunday to you.
Yes, the Santa Anas are invading Santa Clarita today.
The trees are like bending outside. Did you see how windy it was last night?
It woke me up. And that's not a bad thing. I like changes in the weather.
Well, the good news is that it's nice and clear outside.
Yeah.
And the nighttime the sky last night was fantastic.
We need a little rain,
beautiful,
and then a little wind, and then everything is clear like we live in Alaska, basically. So, well, good. Well, I'm so excited, Mike, that again you emerged victorious from your cage matches of the sound board guys this week.
On board for one more week.
Unstoppable.
Yes.
So, Mike, thank you for joining us today. So, a little of Wade's week in retrospect. So, it was my wife's birthday this week, Mike. And I had to get her a present. And I, of course, did. I did what I used to do in college when I would have a term paper that I had very far advance notice that when it was due, I would wait till the last minute. Did you ever do that ever in school?
Yes.
Yes, I think we've all done that a little bit. So I put myself under a little bit of time pressure, and I said, okay, usually what I get my wife is I will buy her something like a bath soap or something, or maybe a massage. But the problem with those things is that once you use them, they're done. There's no memory. So this week I was like, I'm going to buy her a piece of jewelry. Okay. And this is fraught with peril for most men that do this. So I go to a local jeweler and I walk in and I find the nicest looking lady I can find. And she looks at me and she says, "Oh, okay, great. I'd love to help you. What are you looking for?" I said, "Well, let's start with some earrings." She goes, "What's your budget?" And this right out of the gate is negotiation tactics 101. See, I negotiate for a living, Mike. As an attorney, when I defend people, I'm always working with the prosecutor to be able to try to work something out.
Right.
Okay. And so that means that in my normal life during the day, I hate negotiating. I absolutely hate doing it because that's all I do all day for work. So in this situation, I'm under the gun. I've waited till the last minute. Someone that obviously knows what they're doing, because right out of the gate, she's asking me for my budget. And then she pulls out the calculator. Have you ever had this experience?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to bring this around to an actual legal topic here in a second. But so she brings out this calculator, and is there any situation in life that it's good that someone you barely know starts using a calculator? I think it's almost always bad.
That happens at car dealerships a lot.
When your accountant takes out a calculator, bad. Okay?
Yes.
So we're sitting there, and there's the price tag, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're looking at something that's $1 or you're looking at something that's $100,000. Okay, whatever your budget is, it's irrelevant. The process is the same.
Right.
So the price tag has a certain number on it, and I haven't bought jewelry in a long time, and I'm like, "Oh, isn't it this number?" And she goes, "No." She goes, "Let me see what I can do for you." Right? And so she starts typing the numbers on this thing, and immediately I'm like, I am way out of my league on this. So luckily I was dressed kind of shabbily, so that kind of helped my situation a little bit. But I think the funny thing is that I want things to be what they are on the ticket. You know what I'm saying? So I know, like, they should have a CarMax for jewelry where it's like, hey, listen, there's no haggling. Whatever's on the ticket is on the ticket.
No misrepresentation.
Right. Well, because it's just, I feel like when she's working on that calculator, she's just figuring out her monthly bills and her commission,
What her cut is going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and the reason why that's important for what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about sort of the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law.
Okay.
In that situation, basically, I want there to be the letter of the law. Whatever it says the price is, I want that to be the price, and I want there to have certainty. Okay.
Exactly.
But in the law, basically, that doesn't always work that way. Effectively, when you have human beings that are working in a system, and there has to be some kind of what we call discretion so that there are some good outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want robots basically deciding everyone's fate.
No.
Okay. So a good example.
Hardly.
Right. A good example is a speeding ticket. So when you're driving down the road and the speed limit is 55, technically, if you go 56, you're breaking the law.
Right.
But we all live in California, and we know that on the freeway, nobody drives the speed limit.
I do.
You do?
No, I don't, actually. No, I don't.
Well, we both do for purposes of this conversation because it's broadcast across the nation. We always perfectly drive the speed limit, which enrages other people because they're mad at us for going so slow. But other people besides us, they're always going a different speed. Now, the key
Right.
is, what is the speed? What's the safe speed where you're not going to get pulled over? And also, what's also the safe speed for safety's sake?
Well, it's isn't it the flow of traffic, right?
I would agree with you, but what the important thing is, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah.
The person's opinion that matters is the police officer.
Exactly.
So and that's where this idea of discretion comes in. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back from the break, how they make those decisions. And sometimes they make those decisions based on factors that have nothing to do with what you've actually done. When we come back from the break, what we're going to talk about is the number one thing you should not do when trying to talk yourself out of a ticket. This is Wade Beyond the Courtroom. I'm your host, attorney Wade Skalsky, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to Wade Beyond the Courtroom. I'm your host, attorney Wade Skalsky, and this is your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. So when we were talking in the last segment, we were talking a little bit about the worst thing you can possibly do to try to talk yourself out of a traffic ticket. So, Mike, have you ever gotten a traffic ticket before?
I have.
Okay, I have too.
It's been a number of years, but yes, I'm guilty of getting a couple tickets.
I recently got a ticket, which was my first one in a while. And basically, the number one thing that you don't want to do in that situation, and it's counterintuitive, is you never, ever try to argue your way out of the ticket. Because you're trying to argue with someone who has all of the power and pulled you over for a reason.
Right.
So they saw something, they have the discretion, and they decided, I'm going to pull that person over. So arguing with the officer, tearing the ticket up, throwing it in their face, I've seen those videos of people doing that. That's not quite what you want to do. Is it just me? Does that seem like crazy talk?
No, that's correct.
And so the reason is because, look, the officer has some discretion if he's going to give you a warning or if he's going to actually write up your ticket. And I think insulting that person, tearing up the ticket and throwing it in their face, not really a good plan of action. So, and what does the officer do in terms of in his head that determines if he's going to let you go or if he's going to write you a ticket? Now, I've never been a police officer, so I can't speak for them. But I do know that from my own experience and observation is that sometimes younger officers are more apt to write you a ticket than perhaps someone that's more experienced. Now, do you have any idea why that is, Mike?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Well, I think the reason is that I'll use an example.
Maybe because they've seen it all before, and maybe they're comparing it to, say, other tickets they've written or other situations.
Well, I think that's one reason why you never try to talk yourself out of a ticket unless you can come up with something super creative. I heard once of someone said, started fiddling with their radio and said, "Scotty, beam me up," and that got them out of the ticket. But when an officer has been on the job for a long time, he's seen it all, he's heard it all. It's sort of the dog ate my homework version of tickets. So that's why the arguing may work for, or talking your way out of it may work for a younger officer sometimes maybe, but typically not because they don't know what their discretion is yet. When I was a young prosecutor, I was 25 years old when I got out of law school, and I was placed in a courtroom, and it was my job to work for the government, and I was actually very afraid to use my discretion because I had no idea what I could do and couldn't do because I had very little experience. And so I think a similar thing, I don't think officers are afraid, but I think that they get worried about what they can do, what they can't do, because they're human beings just like us. I mean, sometimes we forget that just like when you're working in radio, if you haven't done it for very much, you're unsure of what you can say and what you can't say, versus where you find out what that line is over years and years of experience.
Yes.
So what I would suggest is don't tear up a ticket, throw it in the officer's face, and say, I dislike you strongly, or words to that effect.
Are most tickets easy to beat if you go to court on them?
Well, listen, all tickets, every case is different. And that's the one thing that I think that people need to understand is that there's not a one-size-fits-all defense to traffic tickets. People will go online and they'll look things up. Then they'll go into court and they'll try these things that they read online, and then they're surprised when it does not work. Well, the reason is because every case is different. Every officer is different. Every court is different. Every judge is different. So in those situations, there's so many different factors, and the only way to really know the best way to proceed is experience.
So the police officer's discretion turns into the judge's discretion if it goes to court.
Well, right. If there's a trial, there's a little mini trial. There's no
Right.
jury, but the judge will decide if he's going to find you guilty or not guilty of whatever it is that you're alleged to have committed. So if you are speeding or alleged to have speed, then you'll have a little trial, and the officer will say, well, I had a laser on him and I visually estimated, and then the person will say, well, that's impossible because my odometer doesn't work, or whatever, and then the judge will make a decision. And in that situation, the judge is actually very specific. You may catch a judge on a day that he's retiring the next day. I actually saw this where he dismissed every case. You know what I mean? And they're not really supposed to do that. So, and I won't identify which judge that was. And it wasn't every case, but let's just say that he was a little more amenable to finding in favor of the people because he was kind of a party gift to the public, I guess.
So as I understand it, if the officer that wrote the ticket does not appear in court on the day you go, that ticket is dismissed. Is that correct?
That's correct. The state has the burden of proof in every case. And what that means is that you don't have to do anything. It's a constitutional right to where you can say, I take the fifth. I don't admit that I did anything wrong. And the state or the officer has to prove that you did something wrong. So if they don't show up, state can't make its case.
And that happens a lot, I understand.
Well, actually, it depends on the court, and it depends on the agency. People forget there's many different agencies. CHP officers, sheriff's officers, in my experience, seem to show up a lot. I won't identify some of the agencies that don't show up as much, but I do feel most officers show up a majority of the time. But sometimes, look, they have very pressing jobs. So they may be on the beat and they may have something that happens and they have to respond to an emergency, and they're going to a real emergency. So that's going to take precedence, our safety, over, let's say, helping somebody, going to court for a ticket. So that, again, and that's kind of luck of the draw. You don't want to depend on that when you're defending a case.
So that being said, you've got the defendant, you've got the officer who issued the citation, and the judge. Can the judge still rule in the favor of the defendant?
Oh yeah, that's you and me. We're the quote the defendants. We're just the normal people. I have a ticket that I got written up for a ticket, and I'm technically the defendant. They're alleging that I was speeding. Okay, thankfully not too fast, but and then so if there's a trial on that case, then I'm the defendant. I'm the person that is having to defend myself. But if the officer doesn't show up in that case, then the case would get dismissed because the people always have the burden, and it's. The thing that I talked about with that whole discretion idea is that sometimes, too, is that officers in court will, if you talk to them in court, and again, you don't tear the ticket up and throw them in the face, sometimes they may allow you to, and this happens as an attorney, is I'm able to get tickets reduced to something else because I argue a fact of the case and I point something out to the officer. Maybe the signage isn't good there in terms of where the posted speed limit. And then in that situation, I may be able to get the ticket reduced to something else. Right. But again, that's discretion versus letter of the law. And, we want people to have discretion because everything doesn't always work out like it's supposed to work out in life, at least not in my life. Does it work out in your life perfectly all the time, Mike?
I would hope, but not always.
Well, but you have the perfection of rolling with whatever happens. You have a very laid back personality. That's what I like about you. So
well, thank you. I try.
That makes it easier. So, the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law actually is constantly moving. Things change. Politics can make a difference. So everyone has a camera phone now. Everyone has a blog now. Everyone has their own Facebook account where they can post videos to. So there's a lot of scrutiny now in terms of on the police, on the prosecutors, on defense attorneys. And so that sort of sunshine everywhere has the effect of, it can kind of tighten people up a little bit about using discretion, because what they don't want to happen is be caught on some issue that they have to defend themselves in a public forum. So,
and of course, the best thing would be don't get tickets. But
right, exactly.
Of course, like you said, doesn't always go the way you want it to go.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a brief primer basically on sort of letter of the law versus spirit of the law. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about there's a form of gambling going on in Valencia that many people are engaging in unwittingly, not even knowing it. Let's find out what that is. You're listening to your hometown station, KHTS AM 1220. This is Wade Beyond the Courtroom, and I'm your host, Attorney Wade Skalsky. Welcome back, Santa Clarita. You're listening to your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS. I'm your host, Attorney Wade Skalsky, and this is Wade Beyond the Courtroom. So, Mike, when we left, before we get into this gambling that's shocking me that's going on around I'm shocked there's gambling here, I'd like to, again, wish my wife a very happy birthday if she's listening. It was her birthday this last week, and I want to give her as much fanfare as possible. So a very, very happy birthday for her.
Well, happy birthday.
I know, right? Yeah. Kristen is, she's very, very, very happy to be married to her, and I hope she had a great birthday. So now that I have given more fanfare to my wife, let's talk about this gambling.
Yes.
All right. So I like to have a little fun every once in a while, if you can't tell. And I have kind of sometimes a sideways way of looking at things. So when you get your breakfast, Mike, are you a toast guy, an English muffin guy, or some other bread product, or no bread product?
English muffin.
This is great. This is why we work together. I am an English muffin person as well. It's the only form of English cuisine that is any good at all.
Well, fish and chips.
Well, that's
but
true.
not for breakfast.
That's correct.
But go ahead.
All right. So when you order a bread product with your breakfast, right, what do they usually bring you? They bring you some butter and they bring you some jelly.
Right.
Right. So the problem is that sometimes you'll go to a place where you don't get to choose what you get. It's a raffle. It's like you're gambling with your breakfast.
Yeah.
And this infuriates me. I call it the jelly raffle because I am a strawberry preserve guy. And like I said earlier, I don't like to haggle. And so when I order my English muffin and they bring me the plate and it has orange marmalade, which can be good,
Delicious.
or boysenberry, which can be good, it doesn't have the strawberry on it. And I don't want to be, I like to be polite to my servers. I hate to ask for things because I'm always asking for things during work. And it's gambling. I tell you, it's gambling. I think I'm the only person that thinks that, but I think there should be a law about you should be able to request your jelly or preserves in advance.
Well, you want to get what you pay for.
But you don't pay for the jelly.
True.
So, and that's where the back to the idea of discretion comes in. Your server has the discretion of what kind of jelly to bring you. There's no rule. And that's kind of a funny way, to me at least, and perhaps no one else, about a form of gambling in jelly, about what is, when you're in a situation, decided for you, and that's discretion versus not discretion. So have you been following this issue with the Super Bowl coming up, Mike, this Deflate Gate?
Yes.
All right. So if you're not out there, if you're out there and you haven't heard of Deflategate, perhaps you've been in Europe for 3 weeks or 2 weeks. Deflategate is that Tom Brady of the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick are accused, allegedly, of deflating the footballs below the level that's acceptable.
Right.
There's a range, and I don't know exactly what it is. It's like 12 pounds to 14 pounds, or it's 100 pounds to 200 pounds. So it's something that's science. I'm a lawyer. We don't do math and science. But this goes to this idea of what's breaking the rules. So someone like in baseball, it's an unwritten rule that you can kind of scuff up the ball when you're pitching because it gives you a slight advantage. And there's a saying in baseball that says, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Okay. And the reason why that's important is if there's an unwritten rule in the game, let's say that all of the quarterbacks are deflating the ball a little bit, but the rule says, hey, you can't do this. Is that okay? Do you have a stance on that, Mike? An idea?
I think you need to follow the rules.
And, I agree with you on that for this reason, is that we live in a country that is a place that's based upon fairness.
Right.
And I think why people are so mad, some people are so mad about this Deflategate is because, one, they hate the Patriots because they've been so good. It's back in the day in the 90s when the Dallas Cowboys were good. If you weren't from Dallas, you hated the Cowboys. But the other issue is that it's this idea of fairness. We want to have a fair system. Even if we do something wrong, we want to make sure that our rights are taken care of in a fair way. And so it's not really a discretionary rule. It should be a firm rule. That's what the public sentiment is. And in the legal system itself, we all feel that should be the same way. We want it to be fair. And sometimes when you start to have these situations where if there's an unfair rule, people start to, on the edges, change things a little bit. For instance, the speed limit is a great example. The rule is 55 miles an hour. But in practice, it's probably, and I can't speak for officers, there's a number that's an average of you're going over the speed limit, you're going to get pulled over. And of course, if you're doing something unsafe, you get pulled over for everyone's safety. That's never, that safety is a value, which we don't change that rule.
Exactly.
But I think the exciting thing about America is that we've had a lot of rules in the past, things like discriminatory rules, things like segregation, where people started to say, hey, this isn't right. And they started to challenge those things on the edges.
Yeah.
And over time, those challenges became widespread enough to where there could be a change because Americans value fairness. And I think that's one great reason why we live in America. And that's another great reason why things can always change for the better. Sure. And so this idea of, hey, we're not robots. If the law is the law, it should be enforced 100% the same. I mean, it should be enforced 100% the same way every time. But when there is discretion, that discretion should be used in the idea of fairness.
Well, yeah.
Are you with me on that?
Yeah.
Because
and folks take advantage and kind of, take advantage and try to move things in their direction so they have, like I say, you want that level playing field.
Right.
But again, yeah, you want it to be fair.
In everything, in marriage, you want everything to be fair between husband and wife. In business, you want everything to be fair in business, and there's always this tension. There's always this moving back and forth. So I just found out that you've been married for
Going on 30 years.
wow.
This year.
That's impressive.
It's amazing.
I am going. My wife and I will be, as long as I keep remembering birthdays. I hope that we will. I'm sure we will make that going into our 3rd year this year. So we're relatively young.
Oh, congratulations!
So now I know that I can come to you for marriage advice.
Sure, anytime.
So
You're still a newlywed.
I think a newlywed is only one year, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know.
I've heard people try to stretch it to 2.
Yeah.
Can you? That's again. Is
You
that
probably
a rule?
could. You probably could.
Is that a rule?
Well, compared to 30 years, yeah.
yeah. Are you a newlywed? You're not. Are you still a newlywed
No.
at 30?
At this point, no.
No.
Yeah.
You're like a grizzled
Kinda
veteran.
like a veteran, yeah.
Right, grizzled veteran of marriage. And that, look, the one thing I just wanted to talk about today was that concept of just like, the newlywed rule of 1 year or 2 years. That's not a hard and fast rule. That stuff doesn't matter. But we live in a great country to where I really believe that most people, from the people that get tickets to the people that the police that try to give the tickets to the judges that try to adjudicate those tickets, and all across the legal system, most people, a large portion of them, are just trying to get things right.
Right.
And that's what I think is so great about the country that we live in. So I just wanted to talk today about to help you remember that things aren't always perfect, but I think that if we just keep trying to get better and better, we can make them better every single day. So you're listening to Wade Beyond the Courtroom. This is Santa Clarita's hometown station, AM 1220. I'm your host, attorney Wade Skalsky, and stay safe this week, and we will talk soon.